Welcome to another Cards Unbarred episode. My name's Ryan, and in this video, I'm going to show you the 3 to 5 player game Space Dragons, designed by Richie Harhoff. Space Dragons is a drafting trick taker. It uses similar mechanics to trick taking. It has the flow of what you could consider to be a trick taker. It doesn't actually have suits or trump or must or may follow or anything that you see in a traditional trick taker, but it does have the everybody plays a card, highest card played would win the trick. So it has enough DNA that you can call it a trick taker, but I really think the card drafting is more of the main show in this game. It's the parts that you are preparing yourself to do the trick taking at the beginning, and I think has more meaty decisions. This is one of those games where you could not even win a single trick and still do really well based on what you draft at the beginning of the game. So it is a good mesh of the two systems. So if you're trying to introduce a game to a family or friend that maybe doesn't really like trick-taking games that much, but maybe you are interested in them, this could be a good alternative, as again, it focuses more on the card drafting. So if you've maybe played a game like Sushi Go or Seven Wonders and had success with that, this might be able to fall in that similar line. So yeah, let's go to the table and I'll show you how to play. The deck makeup in Space Dragons consists of 80 suitless cards numbered 1 through 80, and also comes with 20 dragon cards, 5 of them which only have points, 4 of them which have mood, science, and crime symbols, and 3 of them which have a combination of those 3 symbols. And lastly, 3 double-sided scoring cards. The cards themselves are broken into 2 sections of importance, and that solid line near the top breaks the 2 sections apart. The part above the line has a bunch of little circles where these symbols in the game will show up, and then everything underneath the line will show the number of the card as well as the symbols that show up at the top of the card right below the number, and any important symbols that show up in the middle, which these are the effects that will take place during the trick-taking part of the game. So as we just cycle through some of the cards here, you'll be able to see the different variations of symbols and effect icons that you'll see that'll show up on the cards. And one of the things that I really love about this game is the cards and the multi-use of them. So the crew cards themselves, on the back side of them, it actually uses the shield and the damage status. So whenever you play a card that gains you a shield, or whenever you take damage, you just take one of the undealt crew cards and you put it underneath your ship. I just think that's a really good use of the deck. Whereas, most games they would have just given you a bunch of extra cards to use for that. Next up, we have the Space Dragons themselves. They are similar to the crew cards where they have the circles in the top half of the card, and then the bottom half doesn't actually have any important information. It's just the card art for the dragons themselves. As you can see, as we cycle through a couple of these different dragons, they have different points, and they also have the 3 different symbols in the game. And just like the crew cards, the back of the dragon cards have that multi-use where the ships that are used in the game for players go on the back of the dragons. And finally, we have the double-sided scoring cards for the mood, science, and crime, with the A and B sides for all 3 of them. As you can see for the different scoring cards, depending on the side you use, the A side has all positive points and the B side uses negative points. To set up for a game of Space Dragons, shuffle the crew cards and deal out 9 cards to each player. Place all undealt cards face down as a draw pile within reach of all players. Players will be drawing cards from here whenever they need to take shields or damage to their ship. Next, shuffle the dragon cards and place 7 of them face down near the draw pile. And from the remaining dragon cards, give each player 1 spaceship making sure you leave the cards face down so no players see the dragons on their spaceship. All remaining undealt dragons will be returned to the box. Then flip the top card from the dragon deck so all players can see it. Then place the 3 scoring cards in the center of the table for all players to see. It is recommended in your first playthrough to use the A side for all scoring cards, but in future plays you can use the B sides or randomize each card. To determine the start player for the first trick during the dragon hunt, you will take 1 card from the top of the draw pile and hand it out to each player. And the player who has the highest number will be the start player. So in this case, the yellow player will be the start during the dragon hunt phase. The 4 cards that were used to determine that can be returned to the box. They will not be used for the rest of the game. A game of Space Dragons is divided into 2 phases, the hiring crew phase and the dragon hunt phase. To complete the drafting phase, players will simultaneously be looking at their hand and pick 1 card to keep and passing the rest to the player on their left. When deciding which card to keep, you want to be paying attention to all of the symbols at the top parts of the card, as well as the number if you're trying to win the trick, because the higher the number, the more likely you are to win the trick. So the blue player will take that 20 and then pass the other 8 cards to the player on their left, which would be the red player over here. And all players are simultaneously doing this. When you are picking your 2nd to 9th card, you are allowed to look at all previous cards you've drafted, but you cannot put it back in your hand and choose to draft another one. You must stick with all previous cards that you've drafted. So choose your crew wisely. After all 9 cards have been drafted, players will then take the 9 cards into their hand and start the dragon hunt phase. To start the dragon hunt phase, the start player will pick any 1 card from their hand and play it face up to the table. So the yellow player will choose to play this 33. In Space Dragons, while again it's still sort of a trick-taking game, there are no rules as far as what card you can play. There's no suit to follow. You don't have to play higher than what was already played. You can simply play any 1 card from your hand at any time. So the green player will choose to play this 12. And now whenever a player plays a card and there is a symbol in the middle of the card, we need to look to see which symbol was played to see if any effect gets triggered. In this case, the green player played a card that has a shield on it. So as soon as you play that card, you'll immediately gain 1 shield and slide it under your ship right here to show you've got that shield down below. Shields are used to protect you from future damage. So anytime you would take a fire symbol damage or a crosshair, which I'll explain momentarily, you would instead remove the shield from your ship. Shields cannot be used to remove previously taken damage. So if the green player already had a damage and gained that shield, they would simply add the shield to their ship. They wouldn't get to remove that damage. But in this case, they are currently here and they've played that 12. So we now move on to the red player, who again can play any card that they want. And they're going to choose to play this 62, which doesn't have any symbol in the middle, so they don't trigger anything. And the blue player is going to play this 11 card, which has a shield. So as we've gone over before, they'll take the shield card from the top of the draw pile, slide it under their ship like that. But the card also has this crosshair symbol. The crosshair symbol is one of the symbols that doesn't trigger until after all players have played a card to the trick. Now that all 4 players have played though, we will check for crosshairs. We are determining who is winning the trick, and that is the highest card that is played, so the 62 is going to win. Now we look to see, did any of the other players play a crosshair? In this case, the blue player played a crosshair over here. So that means the winning player is going to take 1 damage for every crosshair in the trick, played by other players. You can never take damage from your own crosshair. So if the red player had played a card, let's say they'd played that 60, they wouldn't have taken that damage from that crosshair. They never take their own, but in this case, they take the 1 from the blue player, taking that same type of card, but instead of putting it on their shield side, they're going to put it on the damage side, showing they've taken the 1 amount of damage. The cards themselves are not cleared from the trick after they're played. They in fact stay in front of that player. So that way on the next trick, you're going to be covering the card over, but the red player has won this first trick, so they're going to take the dragon card and place it face up in front of them as well to show they've collected that card. They'll then flip over the next card from the dragon pile, and that is the new dragon that players are fighting for. So when you play a card from the second trick on, you can pick any one card that you'd like, and when you play it, you want to play it on top of the card that you previously played, covering everything except for that top bar. So it'll look something like this. So you can still see any symbols that will be important for the end of the game scoring. So the red player is playing this card, but all they actually care about right now is the 47 and any symbols that are on that card, which in this case there aren't any. So we now come to the blue player, who can play any one card, and they will choose to play this 31, covering up their previous card. Again, no symbols, so nothing else happens. We come to the yellow player, and they will choose to play this 40, which has a shield. They take the shield, immediately place it on their ship. And now we come to the green player, who is going to play this 34. Again, no symbol, so nothing happens. Now that everyone's played a card, we check to see it was a crosshair played. In this case, there was one. So the winner of the trick, the player with the 47, will take another damage, putting it under their ship, stacking it off to the side so you can continuously see how many points of damage they've taken. And they will take the other dragon, stacking it with any other dragon they've won, flipping over the new card for the next dragon. Play will continue like this until you play 7 tricks. You will know that you're on your 7th and final trick because the dragon deck will run out since you only put 7 in at the beginning during setup. So the last 2 cards that you have left in hand just get discarded. They won't be used for scoring. Wanting to go over the tool symbol here real quick. So anytime you play this card, you are going to do repairs to your ship. So if the red player played this card, they immediately get to remove any 1 damage they have on their ship. Repairs are done immediately. This isn't something that you can hold for later. So if the red player didn't have any damage and they play this card, and let's say somebody else played a crosshair later in the trick and they win, they couldn't save that repair to repair the damage from the crosshair. It's either you immediately remove the damage because you have it, or you don't have any damage and the repair icon does nothing. The fire symbol means to take a damage on your ship. If you had a shield on your ship, you would remove that instead, but the red player doesn't, so they would simply just take 1 damage. After all 7 tricks have been played, the last 2 cards in all players' hands will just get discarded, and then you will go to scoring. To complete scoring, calculate all positive and negative points in front of your play area. So any yellow circles with a plus symbol, add those together, and then subtract any purple circles. Be sure to check the scoring for the mood, science, and crime based on the card side that you're on. So in this game's example, we're on the A side for mood, so whoever has the most symbols on all of their cards, remembering the dragon cards have symbols as well, they will get 10 points and the second most will get 5. So in this case, the blue player has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The yellow player has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The green player has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the red player has 1, 2, 3. So the blue and yellow player would both be in first place for the most. Whenever there is a tie, the players share the points. So blue and yellow would get 10 points. And the next place isn't skipped, so green would still get 5 points as well. You'd go through scoring with science. The most is 10 points. The least is 5 points. So green has 7 and red has 7. Yellow has 4 and blue has 2. So red and green would get 10 points and blue would get 5 points. And whoever has the least amount of crime will score 10, and the second least amount of crime will score 5. Blue has 2, yellow has 3, green has 2, and red has 2. So red, green, and blue would all get 10 points, and yellow would get 5 points. Players will add up their score, and whoever has the most points wins. If there is a tie, the player who has the most dragons will win. And if there's still a tie, all players are heroes of the dragon hunt, and you need to play another game of Space Dragons to determine the winner. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Space Dragons. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching.